Welcome, my dear mental health enthusiasts, to my special two-part series delving into the captivating world of phobias. Tonight, we embark on a journey through the labyrinth of the human mind, where fears both peculiar and profound lurk in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered. Phobias. Those sinister specters that haunt our dreams. From the bone-chilling fear of mirrors to the soul-crushing dread of being buried alive. Phobias rattle the minds of the brave and the foolish alike. But you don't need to be afraid, because in this series, we will not only explore the curious origin of these fears, but will also shed light on the remarkable resilience of the human spirit in overcoming them. So, gather your courage and join me as we prepare to journey into the abyss, where laughter and courage may reign supreme, but fear has its moment in the spotlight. For in the darkness, where fear lurks in every shadowed corner, lies the key to unlocking the secrets of the human condition. Welcome to Error 404, Mental Health Not Found, the What Are You So Afraid Of edition.
Welcome back to my channel, Error 404 Mental Health Not Found, your one-stop shop for all things mental health. And as you may have seen in that wonderful little intro we did there, we are going to be discussing phobias. Yes, I have a special two-part series all about phobias. Each episode we are going to unpack 10 different phobias. There is also going to be a very special bonus episode out with a good friend of mine, Amy. She agreed to sit down with me and have a little talk about one of the phobias that we are going to discuss in this first episode. It's going to be phobia number 10. So we unpack that one a little bit, and it was a very interesting conversation. So stay tuned for more on that. But before we get into the phobias and what phobias are, I want to cover my butt here a little bit. We are going to mention that I am not a doctor. I am not a mental health professional. I am not a psychologist, a psychiatrist. I cannot diagnose you for anything, nor can I medicate you for anything. So please, 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 do not ask me to do so, because the answer will always be no. If you feel like you are having any kind of mental health crisis, please stop what you're doing and contact the authorities. You can call 911, you can call your family, you can call your friends, anybody that you need to. But I'm also going to be providing links in all of my show notes to mental health providers and emergency providers, so please feel free to use those if you feel that you or someone you know is in need. So with that, let's dive in. Okay, so before we dive into our list of the first 10 phobias, let's first discuss what phobias are. What is a phobia? Well, a phobia is an intense and oftentimes irrational fear of a specific object, a situation, or an activity. People with phobias often experience this overwhelming anxiety or even panic when they're confronted with their fear, even if the posed risk of this object or situation is minimal or even sometimes non-existent. Phobias are considered a type of anxiety disorder. Medically, they are considered a type of anxiety disorder. So that is how they are classified. Some common phobias that a lot of people know about are like a fear of heights, a fear of spiders. Everybody's heard of arachnophobia. There's a fear of flying, aviophobia, or a fear of what I'm doing, public speaking. Although this is pre-recorded, so I'm not really public speaking. You get the idea. But these phobias go well beyond that. They don't limit themselves to the obvious ones. There are a lot of different phobias. There's a phobia of mirrors, which we will actually get into. A phobia of being buried alive. There's even a phobia of cheese. Go figure. Am I right? Cheese. So people can be scared of a lot of things. So phobias can develop due to a lot of various factors, including things like genetics, traumatic experiences, learned behavior, or even cultural influences. Treatment for phobias often involves cognitive behavioral therapy, which from this point out, I'm going to refer to cognitive behavioral therapy as CBT because it is very much a mouthful to say every time, and I'm going to be saying it a lot. So just remember, cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. The other things I'll be referencing a lot is exposure therapy and relaxation techniques, and even sometimes medication can be helped to manage the symptoms and gradually overcome a fear. But what I found in my research was that each fear has something unique about it that it does. Outside of the CBT and exposure therapy and relaxation techniques, there's always something else, a little something that's going to be unique to that phobia that I found to be very interesting. So, with that, let's look at our list of 10 phobias. The first 10 phobias we're going to do in this episode, these phobias are a little more visceral. They're a little more kind of in your face, so to speak. They're more serious, as it were. I mean, a phobia by definition is irrational, but these phobias are going to be a little more on the serious side, where the second episode, the second set of 10 phobias is definitely going to be on the lighter side. So things that we're all going to be able to get a little chuckle of. So let's dive in to our first phobia. Okay, so number 10 on our, wait, no, number 10, number 1. I was going backwards. I was doing a count down. No, we're going to do a count up. So number 1, our very first phobia here. I don't know why I chose to add this one to the list, mostly because to this moment, I still cannot properly pronounce it. So it's a long one, but let's try it out here. Okay. Hexakosioihexekontahexaphobia. Don't ask me to do that again. This is the fear of the number 666. Now, often associated with superstitions and or religious beliefs, especially in Christianity, where the number 666 is referred to as, quote unquote, the number of the beast, or is associated with the devil. People with this phobia often experience anxiety, fear, and avoidance behaviors when they're confronted with this number. As a example, I have seen people who were out shopping and their total came up to $66.06, or, you know, whatever. that equivalated to, and it was just 666 in a row. And I have seen people take something out of their cart. I have seen people add something to their cart just to make that number go away. So there is a lot of superstition kind of surrounding the number, and a lot of it is going to be learned behavior with these avoidance techniques, especially again within the religious community. And I don't want to limit it to just Christianity, because it's not, but that number kind of transcends a lot, and people associate it with bad. Something bad will happen. You need to not have that number. But people who severely are afraid of this number, the treatment involves, again, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and that is the last time I'm going to say that, exposure therapy, and addressing any underlying beliefs and fears related to the number 666. So kind of getting into why this number scares them so much and trying to help them overcome that a little bit. So that is our first phobia, Hexakosioihexekontahexaphobia, the fear of the number 666. I am never saying that again. All right, so we're on to number 2 on our list of phobias here. Our next phobia is one that I personally relate to very much so, and I'll get into why in just a moment. But we are going to discuss taphophobia. Taphophobia. Tapho phobia. This is the fear of being buried alive or the fear of cemeteries, and I happen to have a fear of both. So first of all, I'm very claustrophobic. I do not like enclosed spaces. And outside of that, I also don't like being constricted. So people who give giant bear hugs, I get very anxious. I get just kind of panicky when that happens. I also do not believe that we belong in cemeteries at all. I feel that a cemetery is a place where we have laid our loved ones to rest. That is where their bodies are, if you are not cremated. And by going into a cemetery, we are invading their space without their consent. We're not giving them the option. And I understand that for a lot of people, being able to go to a loved one's grave is very important to them, because it helps them with closure. It helps them remain connected in a way. And I get that. I 100% get that. And I'm not going to tell anyone else that they cannot go to cemeteries, but I personally don't. On the few occasions where I have had no choice but to go to cemeteries, I had found myself actively apologizing before I went in, while I was in there, and as I was leaving, because I felt like I owed the people who were laid to rest there that I was invading an apology for that. But so the fear of being buried alive or the fear of cemeteries, this stems from other fears like I talked about, enclosed spaces or claustrophobia. It also comes from like a fear of death and other cultural influences surrounding burial practices. Some of those can be very religious as well. People with this phobia often experience anxiety, panic attacks, and a lot of avoidance behaviors when they're confronted with the idea of either being buried alive or having to visit a cemetery. Treatment does involve CBT, relaxation techniques to help manage the fear and the associated symptoms, and exposure therapy. So this is a little interesting. Exposure therapy for this one can oftentimes involve things like going to a cemetery with a trusted friend or family member who you know will keep you safe, and to help you kind of come to terms with the idea of being in there. There have also been some, I'm going to use the word Well, I mean, it is exposure therapy, but it's not something I would do. But people who have been put in specific enclosed spaces or boxes, knowing that a trusted friend or family member was there, who again wasn't going to let them get hurt, I would just completely freak out. Now, although there are these techniques to help deal with claustrophobia, it's important to note that the mind's reaction and the associated physical reactions that you go through when you're in that kind of situation are actually a very crucial defense mechanism to keep an individual from being in a situation that would cause them harm. So that fear of enclosed spaces, that's actually your brain's way of saying, okay, we gotta, no, this is not okay. So yeah, taphophobia, the fear of being buried alive, the fear of cemeteries. Spooky. All right, so number 3 on our list of phobias is ecclesiophobia. This is the fear of churches or religion. Now, people with this phobia experience a lot of anxiety, severe discomfort, and panic attacks when they are forced to enter a church, or even if they encounter religious symbols or have to participate in a religious practice, whether it's in a church or not. This often stems from negative past experiences involving religion. Sometimes it comes from a fear of divine punishment, as well as any existing underlying anxiety disorders that may already be present. Treatment does involve CBT, exposure therapy, but most importantly, addressing and exploring any underlying beliefs or trauma that involve religion, religious artifacts, religious symbols, things like that, to help them cope and manage those symptoms. Ecclesiophobia, the fear of churches or religion. All right, so for this next one, I brought my handy dandy mirror back here. We are going to talk about spectrophobia. Spectrophobia, S-P-E-C-T-R-O phobia. This is the fear of mirrors or one's own reflection. Now, people with this phobia often experience anxiety attacks, panic attacks, and avoidance behaviors in situations that cause them to be confronted with mirrors or where they may see their own reflection. This can be especially difficult for a lot of people in situations where, for example, if you're out clothes shopping and you're trying things on, how are you going to know how you look in it if you aren't looking in a mirror? And there are people who have trouble in large cities where the buildings, the windows on the buildings oftentimes will just be mirrors that reflect right back at you. There are even people who will not go out if it is raining because they don't want to see their own reflection in like a puddle or a lake or any kind of body of water, no matter how big or small. This stems from various factors, including negative past experiences, poor self-image issues, people who don't see themselves as where they should be in life or what they should look like. When they look in the mirror, they may see a version of themselves that is better and or unreachable, as well as any underlying psychological issues that may already be there. But more often than not, in fact, almost always, this involves superstitions. Any kind of superstition involving mirrors and or reflections. Like we've all heard that if you break a mirror, you're going to cause yourself 7 years of bad luck. I can't think of anybody who hasn't heard that one. There are practices where you cover mirrors or you turn them around at night or during a time of mourning to prevent spirits from becoming trapped in them, and those spirits then becoming angry and malevolent and coming to get you. Seeing spirits in a mirror, seeing ghosts in a mirror, seeing one's own reflection in a mirror at midnight on specific nights can reveal your, quote, future spouse or the face of death. That's two very opposite ends of that spectrum. Seeing a distorted or augmented reflection in a mirror is sometimes seen as a sign that something negative or unsettling is going to happen in the very near future. So treatment does involve CBT, exposure therapy, and addressing these underlying fears and traumas that may be associated with mirrors, reflections, and specifically these superstitions. That's a big one. Addressing why they feel these superstitions might be true. So spectrophobia, the fear of mirrors or one's own reflection. All right, so that brings us to the halfway point on our list. Fear number 5, phobia number 5 is somnophobia. SOMNI, phobia. This is the fear of sleep or falling asleep. And people with this phobia experience anxiety, panic attacks, and avoidance behaviors, but specifically at bedtime, when bedtime is approaching, or when they are actually trying to fall asleep. Now, this stems from factors for like fear of losing control, a fear of nightmares, a fear of sleep-related disturbances, paranoia, fear of being watched from the outside, or even a fear that entities are in your place of sleep and they are waiting for you to fall asleep so they can do whatever they're going to do to you, as well as any underlying anxiety disorders that may already be present there. And people with this phobia often experience symptoms like insomnia, fatigue, severe irritability, concentration difficulties, all of this due to sleep deprivation, and all of this can lead to depression. People with this fear often end up being very depressed because they're not getting sleep. They're always tired. They're insomniacs. They are so irritable. They can't concentrate on anything because of this fear. So treatment does involve CBT, relaxation techniques, and most importantly, sleep hygiene education and medications sometimes to help address the anxiety, the sleep disorders, or sometimes both. But that sleep hygiene education is going to be a big one on there. And know that, you know, nothing is actually under your bed. I hope. Now I need to check under my bed. So next on our list of, and by the way, there was nothing under my bed. There was absolutely nothing under my bed. Number 6 on our list is frigophobia, Frigo phobia. This is the fear of cold or cold things. People with this phobia experience anxiety, panic attacks, and avoidance behavior when they are exposed to any kind of cold temperatures or even objects with coldness, such as ice, snow, ice cream, iced coffee. Gay gasp. Iced coffee. Who could be afraid of iced coffee? This stems from various factors, including negative past experiences with the cold or cold weather, fear of hypothermia, frostbite, as well as other underlying anxiety disorders. These symptoms for this one include sweating, trembling, rapid heartbeat, a strong urge to escape from any kind of cold environment. And the treatment does include, obviously, CBT, exposure therapy, and relaxation techniques to help manage their fear and develop healthy coping strategies to help deal with cold-related situations. Frigophobia.
Who could be afraid of the fridge?
All right, so number seven on our list of phobias is heliophobia, Helio phobia. This is the fear of sunlight or sunlight exposure. People with this phobia experience anxiety, panic attacks, and avoidance situations where they may be exposed to sunlight or have to be in any kind of really bright environment. They avoid that like the plague. This stems from factors. This stems from factors including past negative experiences, like with a lot of these, but with sunlight or brightly lit areas. A fear of skin damage, sunburn, and again, as well as a lot of underlying anxiety disorders that may already be present. So, symptoms include sweating, trembling, rapid heartbeat, a strong urge to stay indoors and avoid any activity that involves going out when the sun is present. I just can't imagine. I love my beach days. They're the best. Treatment involves CBT, exposure therapy, and relaxation techniques to help overcome these fears and help develop healthy coping mechanisms and strategies for managing sunlight exposure. But additionally, some protection measures like wearing hats, sunglasses, and sunscreen is oftentimes recommended as well to help specifically with the anxiety portion of this. So, heliophobia, the fear of sunlight or sunlight exposure. And number 8 on our list of phobias is haphephobia, Haphe phobia, haphephobia, the fear of being touched or having to touch others. People with this phobia experience intense anxiety, panic attacks, and will go out of their way to avoid any situation that may require them to be in physical contact with other people. This stems from negative past trauma involving touching or being touched, anxiety disorders, or even, and we're going to get back to this in a minute, even sensory sensitivity issues that can make being touched or having to touch others painful physically. Symptoms involve sweating, trembling, rapid heartbeat, and an overpowering urge to avoid any kind of situation where physical contact may happen, whether it's voluntarily or involuntarily. Treatment does involve CBT, exposure therapy, and relaxation techniques to help create healthy coping mechanisms for managing touch-related situations. But additionally, if you do have sensory sensitivities where that touch can actually be physically painful, it's very, very important that these people create boundaries and build trust with the people around them as an important aspect of that treatment. For those with touch sensitivities, additional measures like wearing extra layers when possible, as well as ways to tell people about their sensory sensitivity, are oftentimes recommended so that people around them will understand what is actually going on with them. So this one can actually go beyond a phobia for people who actually have these sensory sensitivities, which I did do another episode involving some sensory sensitivities and how these can affect people in a lot of negative ways, and how they have to work really hard to work around them. So go back and watch that one. It was very interesting to research. But that is haphephobia, the fear of being touched or touching others. All right, so number 9 on our list of phobias here is going to be a familiar one to a lot of people. You may not know what the actual phobia name is, but you're going to know what it means, and you're going to have some feelings when I tell you. So we are going to talk about coulrophobia. Coulrophobia. Coulro phobia. This is the fear of clowns. Anyways, people with this phobia experience anxiety, panic attacks and avoidance situations where they may involve clowns, like a circus, or even parties, themed events, things like that. This stems from factors like a negative portrayal of clowns in the media. It could be childhood traumas related to clowns, as well as any underlying anxiety disorders. And the symptoms do include sweating, trembling, rapid heartbeat, and a strong urge to flee or avoid any situation involving clowns. Treatment does involve CBT, exposure therapy, and relaxation techniques, but additionally, education about clowns and understanding that they are fictional characters or performers portraying a role is oftentimes very helpful to alleviate the anxiety related to clowns. But I do agree that the media portrayal of clowns is not favorable. We'll just put it that way. You got things like It out there, which it's a great movie, but doesn't paint clowns in the best light. So I get it. Coulrophobia, the fear of clowns. All right, guys, so that brings us to number 10 on our list, the final one for this episode. We are going to talk about thanatophobia. Thanatophobia. It is the fear of death or dying. Now, the reason I saved this one to last is this is where the companion episode comes in. My interview with my friend Amy. When I was thinking about doing these episodes, I put out some feelers to the Facebook Hive Mind and thought, I need to ask people, what are your biggest fears? What are you really afraid of? And I thought, I was very convinced that death was going to be high on top of everybody's list. I thought I was going to see that the most. And I got a lot of responses, lots and lots, and hundreds of responses. And I got things like spiders, creepy crawlies, rats, drowning. I got a lot of claustrophobia, buried alive, that kind of thing. But only one person had the courage to say death. My friend Amy is the only one who went there and said, I'm afraid of death. And I found it so interesting because I don't know if everybody else, if their fears just aren't death, or if they're so afraid of death that they don't even want to mention it as a fear. So I was really thrown aback by that, and so I reached out to Amy and asked her if she would be willing to dissect that with me and talk to me kind of about why she has this fear. And so the companion episode will go up with this episode, so please watch that interview. I found it very interesting to be able to unpack that and why Amy is afraid of death, because it's not always the reasons you think. So, Amy, thank you so much for taking the time to actually talk to me about your fear. I know it wasn't easy for you, and I really appreciate you. I appreciate you as a person. I love you dearly. Thank you for sharing. Took a lot of guts to be able to do that, but the fear of death or dying, this is a very, very common phobia, and it manifests in various different ways, ranging from mild anxiety to really, really severe panic attacks. People with this phobia experience heavy distress, avoidance behaviors when they're confronted with the idea of death or dying, and it stems from factors like existential concerns, religious beliefs, cultural influences, past traumatic experiences related to death or dying, like being in a severe car accident where you were actually close to death, and so they got that close and now they're terrified of it, or people who have been in the same room or right there when somebody that they're close to, that they love, had passed on, regardless of how they passed. It's one of the most complex fears, and it can very, very profoundly impact an individual's thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. The symptoms that come with this include anxiety and panic attacks when thinking about or being confronted with the prospect of death or dying, avoiding conversations about death, even obsessive thoughts about your own mortality, other people's mortality, difficulty sleeping at night, nightmares about death. And the treatment does include CBT, exposure therapy, and relaxation techniques, but the most important treatment for this is support. It comes in the form of support groups. It comes in the form of friends and family members. This fear is not always a fear of death for one's person. This can just as easily be a fear of death for others. And getting that conversation going and involving other people really, really helps kind of reduce that anxiety. I don't think there's really a way that you're ever going to fully get rid of a fear of your own life at some point in the future coming to an end. It is really a existential thought. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it, but it is essential for people struggling with this phobia to seek that support from friends, family, and mental health professionals so they can develop healthy coping strategies to improve their quality of life when having to deal with this phobia. It is a very scary one, thanatophobia, the fear of death or dying. Watch that companion episode. All right, guys, so that was our first 10 phobias. I hope that you learned something about fear, the state of fear, and in a way, maybe I put a little fear into you, made you think about things in a different way. I really hope I didn't add to your fears, but if I did, I'm only half sorry. We're all afraid of something. But those were our first 10 fears. There is going to be a second episode here coming out not too long here, and it's going to be another set of 10 fears. But these are going to be a lot more lighthearted. They're going to be something we can laugh at, some things that are going to seem silly. So that's going to be a fun one to see as well. Again, I want to thank Amy for taking the time to sit and speak with me about her fear and really opening up to the world like that. It means the world to me. I hope in some way that having that discussion was able to help you kind of find a little bit of relief in it by being able to speak to these things. I know it's not difficult or not easy, but really just thank you for doing that. I also want to thank my amazing and brilliant husband who helped me create the intro to this video there. He kind of gave me a lot of direction and worked the camera, so I really appreciated everything he did to help make, just kind of a fun intro to a spooky episode series. So thank you, my love. I look forward to collaborating with you in the future, and I'll see you at home. I mean, hi. So that's it for this episode. If you or someone you know is dealing with any kind of mental health crisis, again, check the show notes. I am going to provide lists of numbers and people that can be contacted. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, please reach out to authorities, reach out to your friends, your family, anybody you do trust because mental health is not something that should be shoved under the rug. It is something that should be forefront in everybody's mind because we're all struggling with something All of us, not one of us isn't. And anybody who says that they aren't, well, that's what they're struggling with right there. So thank you for tuning in. Stay tuned for episode 2 of our phobias here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And remember, life is just a movie. And our minds, well, they're the twist we never saw coming. Bye.